For the outer shell, I'll be using Plaster F20. I got that one from O'Neill's Material, I think, in the UK. I like to dye it just so it's easier to see. So I got these cheap pigments, silicone pigments from Amazon. I think they're like £10 for a set of 6. For the outer shell, I'll just use this fabric, which is I don't know what it is. It's just a fabric that you use when you paint to cover the floor. And then I'll be using Plaster of Paris because it's dirt cheap. So your outer shell costs probably like something like £2. Other things we'll need is gloves, some clay. This is just basic pottery clay. And I like to use a screwdriver and a clamp. I'll show you what in a minute. But this can be done in a lot of different ways. So what I like to do is we need to make with clay a hole that will be the entrance where we put the silicone. Usually something about the size of a thumb is more than enough. Just making sure it sticks. And then I like to do this so I have easy access to the under, and that's the only reason I use the screwdriver and the clamp, but any other way of holding it would work. Right, so now we can weigh the silicone, and we want to do 2 layers. The first layer is going to be thin, a thin coat all around the skirt, and then we'll do a second layer where we will add, yeah, I forgot to mention, this is quite important. So Platthix is an additive, a silicone additive which thickens the silicone, and that will allow then a second coat which is much thicker and will reinforce the whole mold. So I want to make sure our mold is clean. Yep. So I will start with 50 grams, so 25 part A, 25 part B, which should be plenty to do a thin liquid coat around the... So we have to shake. Then I'll add a bit of the dye. The dye really helps to see where you've coated, because if it's transparent, translucent, it's really hard to see. And obviously these dyes are really strong, so you just need a tiny drop. Then is the steering game. So I have a vacuum chamber, and I like to degas the first layer, but according to the manufacturer you don't need to degas Platzil FS20, So I think it would be fine to use it just like that. But because it's the first layer, I don't want bubbles to sort of mess up with the details. But we have to be fast because this is 8 minutes. So give it a quick stir. Right. Take the stick out. The degassing is going to mix it further. Okay, so this has degassed for about 1 minute and it's already much better. So what I'm going to do is, I'll use the spatula. Try and work out the first layer of silicone a little bit everywhere. You can use a brush to do that, it's probably easier. But the brush is wasted afterwards. I'm going to take this out. Basically coat the underneath. It's quite important that there is no bubble in the detail. For example, I just trapped a bubble in the eye, so I just need to pop it out. It's already starting to solidify a little bit. We've used 50 grams. I think the bigger the batch, the harder it would be to work it on time. But the most important is just to cover with a thin layer that captures the details before it's too solid. So for example, now that this is already rubbery, I'm not using it. I would just be scratching the surface away. And now we need to wait for this layer to dry, about 30 minutes, probably a bit less, but I usually wait half an hour before I come back and put the second layer. Okay, so it's been 10 minutes and actually it's more than enough. It's already really hard. So we'll just make the second batch. I think we'll use about 100 or maybe 120. So I'll weigh 60 of each. and without the thickener, it's liquid. But if I add, and it's only a few, you don't need a lot. This bottle is almost finished anyway. I don't know, it's maybe 10 drops. It really makes a dramatic difference. It makes it into a paste. It's almost instantaneous. Now I want to build an even layer around the scald, but thicker underneath the scald, because this is where I will have the cut to open the mold. Alright, so this has dried and it's nice and strong. So now we want to place that into a plate. Now we can kind of squish a bit the clay and then have this at, I don't know, maybe 2 centimeters from the top. I mean this gap here, and then we'll make a clay wall. It doesn't have to be pretty. Right, it can be nice to do a couple of registration keys. It's not essential, but it only really takes like a second, so might as well. Alright, now we're gonna prepare some, I don't know how you call that. It's tissue that you put on the ground to protect the floor when you're painting. It's just some mesh. This is dirt cheap as well. I think any sort of mesh or hemp or I don't know. There's a name which I forgot. I usually cut stripes about this size. That's easy for me to work with. I would be a lot more careful if it was an actual mold where we want to keep the details and we want to have a nice seam line. But here it absolutely doesn't matter because we have the inner shell. Ta-da. Okay, then we're gonna make plaster. I think probably maybe 200 of water and 400 of plaster. So the ratio plaster of Paris is 2 plaster, 1 water. Put the water first. Cool. Got 150 of water. .300 of plaster. So you want to put all the plaster in one go into the water. Give it a chance to sit for a bit. And then we mix. know it's not great, but sometimes I do adjust the ratio afterwards. I think a bit more water for that one. Right, we've got a very runny solution of plaster, and then we can do first coat. Right, it's kind of covered. Now I'll place my little strip of tissue. Alright, it's been 15 minutes. That's how it looks. And we just remove the wall. Right, so now we're going to do the second half, and the most important part of this whole process is to not forget the Vaseline onto the edge of the first part, otherwise everything is lost. So yeah, a nice and generous coat of Vaseline. Like that. With a brush or with the finger. And also on the outer edges. Because that allows us to just be a bit careless and to walk faster. I'm just tidying up a bit, and then we'll do the same. This is the clay I used previously. have this on this side, and then here is what you want to avoid is the mold going like that. It needs to go like that and that, so like a thick edge. Otherwise, when you demold, all of that will be really thin and will just crack. So always at the end, add more on the side. Alright, so I've left it to dry overnight. It's really tough now. It's a good idea to leave it overnight because the stone really gets a lot harder, and if you try and demold too early, you take quite a big risk of damaging the mold. It's worth being a bit patient. And then all you need is a screwdriver and something to hammer. That's my hammer. Easy. Okay, one part where I haven't been really good is these are not very even, so it's actually quite hard to get the soft shell out of the hard shell. A lot harder than I would have liked. Oh, it's alright. So here we are. So because it's a small mold and the edges are actually super rough, it does lock onto itself very easily. That's the hole. Now we remove the clay, that's our skirt in there, so we need to free the skirt. So what we're going to do is cut using sharp knives. We're going to cut in a zigzag around the areas, 2 lines, around the areas where it's the thicker, so I think here and here is quite thick. And then what you want to do is always have this zigzag under, so hopefully we can peel it off so that we don't do any cut where the skirt is exposed, which means in the future there won't be any seam lines for any of the skirts except under it. So here goes nothing. I'll try and do it in front of the camera, but you want to get in there and then basically make teeth cut as much as possible. It's not always very easy. So that will afterwards lock onto itself really well and it will be watertight. You kind of want to stop here. There's no need to go further. Alright, so here I have bigger teeth. Maybe a bit more here. Basically we want to cut as little as possible but still allow us to recover a skirt by just doing this. Here we are. This is our mold. This is the tag. This is the front. And as you can see, the mold will lock back onto itself very well if you align the teeth. You can barely see, and then because the hard shell will hold that and it will be upside down, there will really be no chance of a leak. So let's just make a quick fit test. The only thing I'm worried is this part is quite big, but should be able to. Should put the release agent inside. Make it nice and releasable, and then put this back inside. Make sure the teeth are well aligned. Yep, and then place this back over the top. Okay, it doesn't quite look too well. All right. Yeah. And then normally I would just use one of these to hold it in place, and then pour the silicone. And here's the mold. I think doing a mold like that is around 2 hours of work. And probably, if you're careful when you pull out the skull, the cast, I think you should get an easy 10 cast out of this. Although I'm not too experienced, I haven't really done that for long term. Here we are.